Ken was a majority leader, I was a majority leader. I know the majority leaders have been looking at the clock and looking at the calendar all morning long and not pleased. Ken really was an intellectual powerhouse. He and I both ran and won in the same year in 1992. Me for the Senate, he for the House. He totally drank the Kool-Aid with the no PAC money pledge. When I was running, and it was easier for me because I wasn't supposed to win, when I was running, put limits on what people in PACs could give and what I could spend. So we had this conversation periodically during the elections, although not that often, about money in politics, about his real passion. He called me one time, and he wasn't big on small talk, as you could tell. And I figured out a few weeks ago, if he would have been, when he was visiting his daughter, who happens to live around the corner, and I just figured that out a few weeks ago as I was playing waiter, he would have come down the street and visited. He was never big on small talk, but he called me one time out of the blue during the election, asking about a check that one of his relatives in Michigan was going to bring. It was going to give him. It was supposed to be a rather large check, and he was trying to figure out whether that was okay to take or not. And I said, well, Ken, I limited contributions to, I can't even remember what it was like $500 or $200. It was before the voters did it for us. I said, I wouldn't take that kind of contribution that big, but you're certainly, welcome to it if you choose to. It could create a conflict. I mean, his conclusion was, well, he's never going to want anything from me. And that was really the end of the conversation. There was no more talking about it, no more doing it. I think he was that professor just trying to ask the question to get himself where he already was. And it was fine. I think the check ended up being smaller, but still good. The same thing happened when it was talked about him walking the state for referendum C and D. He went by my district walking, and he called me real quick. He said, listen, I'll be walking by your district. Will you join me? And I said, well, Ken, I don't support Representative D. I think D is a mistake. I support Representative C. I don't know how you can do that when you're out there doing both. He said, okay, and that was the end of the conversation. Boom. It was one of those things where he knew where he was, he figured out where he was, and there was no reason to do the small talk in between. I quite frankly appreciated that in him. When I was over in the Senate and he was over here in the House, we were both on state affairs. We had probably the most 30-second conversations in the hallway that you could have, but they got to the point. I was on state affairs in the Senate. I told him what was coming to him in the House. He was on state affairs in the House. He told me what was coming in the Senate. We were both wildly in the minority. I mean, there was neither of us would have ever expected in our lifetime that we could ever be in the majority. We were both wildly in the minority, but when we wanted, so we didn't have to talk about what bad was coming, because there's nothing bad coming, it was there to die. It was bad from our perspective that they were going to pass and we were going to vote no. And it was a 30-second, this is coming, oh, okay, thank you, this is coming to you, boom, done. He had an incredible grasp of this place and his position in it, and what it meant, not for him, but for the state of Colorado. He knew, I believe, as I knew when I walked in the building, that the tenets of this building, the rules of the building, the procedure of the building are much more important than he was, than I was. And he lived that when he was minority leader, he lived that when he was majority leader, and he lived that throughout the committees. He went about his business in an orderly, business-like, intellectual fashion, which, as you could tell from this morning, and those of you that were in the service in the synagogue could tell, drew people in. Ken owned his district like nobody else because he served his district like nobody else. That he put them first, he put this place first. Ken was an amazing politician in the best sense of the word. He would have been an amazing Secretary of State. And Ken and the measure of a person really 63 years or 62 years, whatever it was, it isn't when you die, it's what you did when you were alive. And the stuff that Ken did when he was alive, and the testimonies today, and the testimonies in the service of the synagogue are incredible, and something that really proves out the life that he lived. Ken is missed by me today, missed by many today, but he will be remembered tomorrow. thank you all very much for allowing us to, as Grossman said, indulge ourselves, and thanks for allowing the morning to be used like this, Mr. and Mrs. Majority Leader.